Hey guys, welcome back, it's Meg. Today we're going to be running a 20 Spires of Ascension on my Mistweaver. You can find my stat weights in the top left corner, my legendary in the top right, and my talent choices and trinkets in the bottom right. Our affixes this week are Storming, Inspiring, Fortified, and Prideful. This is going to be our first pull and our lust pull. We're going to CC that Vanguard because we want to be able to kick things as it is Inspiring Week. You can go ahead and throw Bone Dust Brew in, making sure we're getting a kick on Diamond back there. We're going to pop Lust once everything's gathered, and we're going to pop Crane and start spinning, making sure that we are dispelling those Burden of Knowledges as quickly as we can. As everything is finishing up dying, we're going to go ahead and pull that Vanguard that we CC'd previously. We're going to pull that up to the next pack, killing it on the way. The Inspiring from the previous pull isn't dead yet, so we are going to go ahead and CC that Mender. That's really the only thing in this pack that you really want to make sure you're interrupting. Just make sure that your healer knows that you are not going to be able to kick any of the Dark Lashes. They do quite a bit of damage, so we want to make sure that people are chopped as much as they can, because if you get 2 and you're not at 100%, it could kill you. Now that our previous pull, Inspiring, has died, we're going to go ahead and pull in our Mender. We can kick the Mender, we can kick the heal, but we still can't kick any of the Burdens of Knowledge or the Dark Lashes, so just make sure that you're keeping people top tier as well. Normally I'd try and get a drink here, but I was comfortable with how much mana that I had. We went ahead and CC'd our Inspiring Mender, but we do have a Rebellious Fist that gets off. It does one-shot our Boomkin. Everyone else lived, but we're just going to go ahead and let him run back. I do have NGB res, but we weren't in any rush to be killing this because we do have Prideful right after, and we want to make sure that the Boomkin is here for that. It's also not really worth wasting the B-res when the graveyard is so close. Storming is one of those weeks where, as a monk, you just really wish that you were arranged for a little bit. It makes it pretty hard to heal given that most of our healing is done through channeling or through casting, as opposed to H Paladin where they have Word of Glory and Holy Shock being their main 2 heals and also instant casts. So it does suck a little bit there, but you can just be mindful of it. You're going to take a couple hits from it, regardless of how good you are at dodging. I think it's a little bit inevitable, particularly on some of these boss fights with lots of movement. But it is worth noting that you could drop your Transcendence out in ranged. You also have Roll or Chi Torpedo to get out if you want to really make sure that you're going to be able to stick the heal that you're trying to cast. Going into our first Prideful here, we're going to pull in our Inspired Mender. Doesn't matter if you have it on Prideful or not, just because you're not going to be kicking anything on Prideful, assuming that's the only ad you're pulling in. But I am going to go ahead and use Crane. You don't really need it on the first boss, especially this week. It's not Grievous, it's not Tyrannical. You should be just fine using Crane here on Pride. Just a reminder, Diffuse can be used as a single self-dispel, so you can go ahead and dispel the other person using Detox, and then you can use Diffuse on yourself to get rid of both debuffs there without using Revival. On this pack, we're just going to make sure that we are line of sighting properly so that everything gets gathered as it should. We're going to use trees right there and keep everything close. I went ahead and used Crane here. There wasn't going to be a whole lot of healing going out, but I was trying to use it more frequently. I was trying to use it on cooldown without screwing myself over for Pridefuls or for bosses. So I used it here more as an experiment than anything, but there isn't enough damage going out that I think that it was worth it. On this pull, I just like to make sure that people are topped as much as they can be. These spear throws can be a little bit unpredictable. You see our rogue gets pretty low there. I believe he took all of those throws. So the RNG is a little bit unfortunate, but again, just keep people topped as much as you can. For this route, we are right side gamers, so we went ahead and got some of our percent from the left, and now we're going to be pulling all of the cats on the right, and we're going to continue on this path for the rest of the instance. So here was my dilemma. I ended up using Crane previously on that left side pack, and I don't have it for this, and I also don't use it on the Pride because I want to make sure that I have it for the big pull with the two Goliaths in it. So I did sit on it for a little bit longer than I would have liked to, but if I use it on this pack, then I wouldn't have it for that Goliath pull that I really do want to use it on. For For this Prideful, I just want to make sure that I'm doing a really good job of extending my hots and using all of my cooldowns in appropriate places so I can save Crane for that Goliath pull. I do end up saving Fort Brew and Diffuse, but I do use Revival towards the end. This was mostly just Vivify healing with Renewing Mist extensions. On this pull, we've got about 35 seconds left of Pride. We're going to go ahead and pop Lust as soon as we pull. We are also going to use Crane and start spinning, making sure that we are sending out those Renewing Mists and getting those extended, as well as using our Enveloping as we get full stacks. This Rebellious Fist does end up going off. One of our melee kicks ended up getting pushed back by a tornado. This happens in storming weeks. It's fairly common, but no one died, so we can go ahead and use the little bit of the end of Crane that we have and get people topped up. In this pack we do have an Inspired ad, but we're not going to bother splitting them up because I can dispel the Venom, it's easy. So we're just going to go ahead and pull this as we normally would, just making sure that we are watching our tank stacks of Venom. Going into Pride once again here, I do have Crane available in about 10 seconds, but again, I'm not going to use it because our next pull is going to be pretty spicy and I want to make sure that I have healing available for that. Again, we're just going to make sure that we are managing our hots correctly and that we are extending our renewing as efficiently as we can, as well as making sure that we keep people topped. I think I do end up using Innervate here as well, so that does help in this situation without Crane. At the very end of that pull there, I did end up using Diffuse, which I really wish I would have held for this pull because I think it would have helped quite a bit with a lot of the damage that we were taking. Right here, we're in-capping that Praetor just to make sure that we get a correct pat, as we're going to be pulling both packs into one with the Spear with a Kyrian player. Right here, the Inquisitor is not quite in there, so I do use Ring in between Crane. I did use Crane here as well because I wanted to make sure that I had healing available for when the spear breaks. We're immediately going to start taking damage with casts. There is an Inspiring in here, and because of that, we were not able to kick the Rebellious Fist. If, as I was talking about earlier, if I had saved Diffuse, I probably would have been able to keep myself alive here. But 2 of our DPS were dead, so it was likely we were going to wipe here anyway. So we go ahead and start our run back, but overall, Crane is definitely going to be the play there, even on non-inspiring weeks. We've got a little bit left over from that previous pull. We do not have any Inspiring at this time as we managed to kill most of the Ether Divers there, so we're just going to go ahead and finish this one up, saving our cooldowns for the next squad leader pull. There's a pretty big pack right after this one, so we don't want to use any cooldowns here if you can afford it. It's really nice to have everything going into that next pull, because at the end of the pull, you are also going to get Prideful straight into a boss. We go ahead and CC some stuff here, and we're going to also make sure that we are only pulling the squad leader initially. We're just going to get rid of that and get rid of that damage buff there. As we pull into the rest of this, make sure that we're getting those dispels as quickly as we can. Make sure that we are also extending our renewing mists as efficiently as possible, as we are going to get into a pride in 2.8%, as you can see on the right there. So we want to make sure that we are holding as much as we can for that prideful. I unfortunately do end up losing our rogue here. He does get a Insidious Venom and Infernal Strife on him at the same time. I had started a cast on him, not realizing that he had a second dot as well, so he does end up dying to that with his Necrolord ability, so he takes down, unable to be healed, but we can get him up with a V-Res before our prideful. The next boss is almost purely single target, so we go ahead and pop Crane here. We're just going to heal this as normal as we would with Crane, and then we're going to head into that next boss with as many cooldowns as we can afford. On this boss, we're going to go ahead and use Prideful with Lust. We want to make sure we get this boss down as quickly as possible. On a Storming week, on a mana inefficient healer, it's pretty scary on this fight because there is lots of single target healing to be done. There's also lots of Storming and orbs to be dodging, so it makes it pretty difficult as a Mistweaver on this pull. Unfortunately, we did eat quite a bit of the orbs. I think I end up dying as well as our mage and our boomkin. We were not very good about dodging things, so there was a lot of time where I could have been doing damage and extending my hots that I actually had to be using Vivify and such to be topping people there instead. About right now is where everything kind of starts to head down a hill. I have to get out of 2 orb areas, and then also I have to deal with the storming there. I end up losing our person with the bleed, and then our other person that was at half health got hit by an orb, so that ended up finishing them off. I don't really have the time to sit still here to heal our rogue, and then I end up getting hit by one of the orbs myself. So it was a pretty end of boss. It was pretty messy, but we do end up killing it, so we can just go ahead and move on and forget that any of that ever happened. Right here, where you would normally just jump over that railing there with CCing that ad on the far right, we're just going to go ahead and shroud all the way through. We would do this normally as well, but because everyone was there, we're just going to go ahead and shroud right off the bat to make sure that no one gets yoinked by our spear friends here. This boss is a bit notorious for killing Mistweavers, mainly just because of the high single target required healing, and usually don't have a prideful going into this because you would much rather have it for that third ad upstairs. So you end up going through quite a bit of mana here. You want to make sure that you are conserving as much as you can, and you're also going to be trying to use some DR like Diffuse, Cocoon, or Fort Brew, some kind of damage reduction or absorb, just to make sure that when you have the Purifying Blast, you are taking as little damage as possible. You can see here I use my Fleshcraft cast for that 20% DR during the cast, and then the residual absorb after I finish casting. Other tools you have at your disposal here are Fort Brew, Diffuse, you have Mana Tea, you've got Crane. If you use it at the right time, you can get that extra mana from your Quantum device. You also have Innervate from our Boomkin, so you have quite a few things to help you here with your mana. You also have Arcane Torrent if you play a Blood Elf like I do. I use this pretty much on cooldown, but I don't think about it until the very end here. It's also a good idea here to use a class that has an immunity or a really strong DR, or just kind of tanky in general to be doing the orbs here. If you don't have a class like that, you're going to want to use your tank and then just pump single target heals into them. If you can, you'll end up using either Cocoon or Crane there because they'll have 10 stacks that you can't immune off. So you just want to make sure that you're not blowing through your mana pool with that, and you want to be able to keep them up for the rest of the encounter thereafter. As we finish up this boss, you want to make sure that you are topping anyone off that still has the Purifying Blast on them, and as we start to gather the next set of spear ads. After all that, we're pretty low on mana, so we're going to go ahead and take the taxi upstairs, and then we're going to sit as soon as we land to get that drink off while everyone else starts the first ad. On this pull, I'm not gonna lie, I was not paying attention and I do end up dying to one of the spear projectiles, but we're not gonna talk about that because I just wasn't watching, so it's alright. This is just an easy tank and spank, make sure you don't stand in shit like I did, and there it is. We're gonna go ahead and B-res me because we've got 3 and we don't really need them, so we're just going to continue to fight this as normal, and then we're going to go ahead and save Crane for the next and last ad. We're going to go ahead and use our last lust here. We're also going to use our Bastion Spear from our Kyrian player, and we are also going to go ahead and pop Crane and just try and get this thing down as quickly as possible. Want to make sure that we are extending our hots, so when the damage starts to ramp up, we are prepared and we don't have to blow a bunch of mana, because right after this we do also have a Prideful, and that is going to be without Crane. I do end up dying here towards the end as well. Normally I would have been okay. I was going to move, and then our rogue and I did the same little dance. We had the same idea of direction we were going in. So unfortunately I did get hit by that orb there, but we're just going to go ahead and pick me up with a normal res and go ahead and head into the boss with the 50 seconds of Prideful that we have left. On this boss as well, during the intermission phase, you can also drop your Transcendence on the spear in the center, so you can get orbs back quickly and maybe do more than one if your comp is a little bit on the slower side. On a week like this boss is pretty simple. It's not tyrannical and it's not grievous, so we're pretty comfortable. We don't have any cooldowns at the moment, but that's okay because there's not a whole lot of damage going out. We just want to make sure that we are getting those dispels. Again, I messed up here and I should have diffused and then dispelled our rogue, but it's alright because we will just heal through it. Go ahead and start spreading all of your renewing, because you don't want to be trying to get those out and losing duration on those during the intermission phase. You want to just be able to use Vivify and be totally healthy without worrying too much about blowing through all of your mana trying to top people that were low going into that phase. As we are finishing up and throwing our orb here, we're gonna use Crane here because we don't have Revival available to take care of the rest of those debuffs. I used my Quantum device, and we're just gonna heal through the rest of that with Crane. We don't end up actually having Revival at the end of this fight either, because I ended up using it on either the Prideful or the ad before that, I can't remember. Regardless, we don't have the ability, so we don't have the Mass Dispel, although that is a tool that you have, particularly on Grievous weeks or Tyrannical weeks where that dot is much more dangerous. Here I did it correctly where I diffused and then dispelled the other one. I got lucky that I could make up for that mess up earlier. Just be aware that with diffuse, the circle does go onto the boss's feet, so just be aware of that one. Right here is where you would normally use Revival as we're coming out of this intermission phase. I have about 10 seconds left on mine, so I don't end up getting to use it, but we do use Mana Tea to heal through that damage, even though we are still above 50% mana. Alright, and that brings us to the end of our 20 Spires as a Mistweaver. If you guys have any comments or questions, go ahead and leave those down below, or you can hit me up on Discord. I'll also link my Twitch down below if you have any questions there or ever want to catch a stream live. This is where all of this content is coming from. So I will see you guys in the next video, and thank you for watching.